This video is not a magic pill, it is a blueprint. By the end, you will hold the complete plan to forge an unstoppable mind. The only question is, will you build it? Enough talking, let's start. Chapter 1. The first battle. From the moment you open your eyes to greet the dawn, a silent battle has already begun. No one else but your own mind is the first to speak. It does not ask for your permission. It does not wait for you to be ready. It simply pulls you quietly into familiar territory, the invisible worries, the loops of doubt, the well-worn paths of procrastination, and the ghosts of old fears. And the most frightening part? You often don't even realize it. An unchecked mind operates on old inertia, like a soldier blindly following yesterday's orders. It doesn't distinguish between a strategic advance and a foolish retreat. It just repeats what it's used to. And if what it's used to is anxiety, hesitation, or small thinking, then that becomes the silent ambush you walk into every day without even knowing it. Most people don't live by command. They live by reaction. They allow the stream of their thoughts to carry them wherever it wants, like a rudderless ship in a storm, thinking whatever comes, constantly busy but lacking direction. Their own mind pulls them along without needing their consent. That's why so many people feel exhausted, even when they haven't done anything strenuous. It's not the body that's tired, it's the mind, overloaded with skirmishes that don't matter. They worry about terrain beyond their control. They're distracted by movements that don't advance their position, world, never realizing they have the power to choose a different battle plan. Chapter 2. The weapon in your skull. Starting right now, the first secret I want you to forge into your soul is this. Your mind is not you. It is a weapon. It is extremely powerful, but also incredibly easy to misuse. And if you don't wield it with awareness, it becomes a silent saboteur, one that robs you of focus, perseverance, confidence, and eventually even the dreams you once fought for. But that very same weapon, if guided properly, can become the sharpest blade you possess, leading you to every victory you've ever desired. It all comes down to what you choose to do with it. Let it lead you, or stand up and begin to lead it. There's one important truth you need to face, not in theory, but in your daily experience. Every thought that doesn't come from your direct command needs to be interrogated, because most automatic thoughts don't come from wisdom, but from old neural habits, scars formed from the past, the environment, negative experiences, and fears you've once lived through. This isn't a flaw if you're aware of it. But if you let it run without your control, sooner or later, you'll veer off course from the life you truly want. That's when your mind, rather than becoming a tool, turns into your most dangerous betrayer. I'm not telling you this to make you anxious. I'm telling you this to wake you up, because the moment you realize that your mind can be reforged, you've opened the first gate to real freedom. Not freedom from work or circumstance, but freedom from thoughts that do not serve you. And only when you have that kind of inner freedom can you begin to live a life that you truly command instead of being led. Chapter 3. The forging of a warrior's mind. You need to see this clearly. Every thought you allow to repeat is a signal you send to your brain's command center. If you let negative thoughts repeat long enough, your brain will treat them as standing orders. If you constantly allow your willpower to be shaken by the little whispers saying, "You're not good enough, you can't do it," then you're programming yourself with doubt instead of belief. But under the same principle, if you learn how to cut down weak thoughts the moment they arise, if you know how to replace them with thoughts of intention, strength, and direction, then your mind begins to transform. The mind, just like a muscle, doesn't grow strong on its own. It becomes strong when you train it every day. And training the mind doesn't mean forcing it to think positively in an artificial way. It means teaching it to clearly discern which thoughts should be kept as allies and which ones must be discarded immediately as traitors. It's about learning to observe without identifying. Learning to interrupt thought patterns when they veer away from your values and objectives. Learning to replace them swiftly, decisively, and intentionally. You might ask me, when is the best time to start mastering the mind? The answer is very simple: right now. Not when you're ready, not when you have time, not when the battlefield is more favorable. Because if you keep waiting, your mind will keep running on its old programming, and the opportunities in your life will keep slipping away like sand through your fingers. You don't need to win the entire war in a day, but you do need to start with one crucial campaign. Choose what you allow your mind to believe in. Every morning, you can begin with a simple act. Pause for a few seconds, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what's the first thought in my mind? Is it taking me where I want to go? And if the answer is no, you know what you must do. Don't parley with it. Don't believe its lies. Don't let it decide the fate of your day. That's how you begin building inner strength. Not from anyone pushing you, not from the world validating you, just from you making one decision. I will not let my mind control me. I will master it. And when you begin to do that consistently, day after day, something miraculous will happen. New thoughts, your thoughts, will start to form. Awareness will become instinct. You'll no longer live in reaction mode, but in a state of clarity and deliberate action. And when the mind becomes clear, every choice in your life becomes clearer too. This is not a loud revolution. It is a quiet yet profound and sustainable transformation. Chapter 4. The Anatomy of Victory. We can't choose every circumstance in life, but we can always choose which thoughts lead us. And in the moment you make that choice, you are no longer a victim of the mind. You are the one at the wheel. Not everyone fails due to a lack of ability. In fact, most failures don't come from not being smart enough, not skilled enough, or not having enough time. Failure begins with something far more silent: an uncontrolled mind, a misguided mindset, and old thoughts repeating day after day without anyone pausing to ask, is this thought leading me to where I want to go? If you're moving toward your objectives, but your mind is pointed toward doubt, distraction, and self-sabotage, then you're fighting against yourself before the world even has a chance to challenge you. The root of success doesn't lie in how much talent you have. It lies in how you manage your thinking. Because the mind, if untrained, will repeat exactly what it was programmed to do yesterday. And if yesterday you lived in fear, procrastination, and self-limitation, then today you will keep living in that same loop. No matter how many books you read or goals you set, the mind doesn't care about your dreams. It only follows habit. And if you don't step in to take back control, then you are silently allowing yourself to live beneath your potential every single day. Most people don't even know what they're thinking. That may sound strange, but it's true. Their minds jump from one thought to another, worrying about things not worth worrying about, overreacting to unimportant matters, imagining scenarios that never happen, and then they feel exhausted. They say they lack motivation. They think they need more knowledge, more time, more advice. But what they really need is to learn how to take control of the first thought that arises in their mind each morning and every thought that follows. You cannot live a different life if you keep thinking the same way. And you cannot expect to act correctly if your head is full of mental garbage. There are two types of thoughts: ones that move you forward, making you clearer, calmer, more decisive, and ones that drag you down, causing procrastination, doubt, fear, and repeated failure. Every thought you choose to keep or discard is silently building the future you, and the unfortunate truth is that most people don't make any choice at all. They let the mind decide for them, and that's why they never change. Real success doesn't come from being smarter than others. It comes from having clearer thinking than others. Successful people don't have fewer worries. They just don't allow themselves to be controlled by useless thoughts. They don't believe everything their mind throws at them. They don't let old reflexes lead the way. They deliberately shape their thinking every day by identifying thoughts that don't serve them and replacing them with thoughts that have direction. They act from a place of clarity, not fleeting emotions. Chapter 5, Securing the Command Tent. So, how do you start rebuilding your mindset? First, by becoming aware of your own thoughts. Notice what you're thinking throughout the day. Which thoughts keep showing up again and again? Are they leading you forward or pulling you backward? If a thought makes you feel discouraged, tired, or small, it has no right to exist in your command tent. You don't have to argue with it. You just have to stop feeding it. Replace it with the right question. Where is this thought taking me? Can I choose differently? And you always can choose differently. After this awakening, you need to structure your thinking. Don't let the mind run wild all day. Write down what your priorities are. Write down your biggest objective. Write down the core values you live by, your warrior's code. When the mind starts drifting, you need an anchor to return to. That anchor is what you made clear beforehand, because if you don't guide it, it will chase after any stimulus it sees. A negative news story, a judgmental comment, an old memory. You must retrain the mind to know what truly matters. You also need to keep your mind clean, just like you keep your body free from toxins. Don't let mediocre content, negative people, or chaotic thought streams invade your mental space. Be selective about what you allow into your brain. Just as you wouldn't eat garbage, you shouldn't think garbage. The mind must be nourished with the right content, the right questions, the right environment. Otherwise, it will weaken day by day. And most importantly, train your focus. No one is born with the ability to maintain right thinking all day long. It must be practiced. Start with 5 minutes a day. Sit down and ask, what am I thinking? Is it useful? Does it need to be replaced? Every time you stop and redirect your thinking, you are rebuilding your neural system. And after enough repetitions, this becomes your new nature. You no longer have to force yourself to focus. You become someone who naturally focuses. It is a silent kind of power, but very real. If you've read this far, I believe you're searching for something deeper, something more real. Perhaps you've heard enough superficial advice. Perhaps you've tried many methods, but always ended up back at the starting point. But I also believe this. Right now, you can truly begin, not with a grand promise, but with a simple commitment to think deliberately from this moment onward. If you're ready to stop thinking like your old self and start acting like the person you can become, leave a comment that says, I'm ready to change, or just the number 1 to mark the moment you sat down, faced yourself, and made a decision. I thank you for being here. In a chaotic world, your mindful presence is something to be treasured. And if you continue, I promise this journey will not only change how you think, but how you live. Chapter 6. The Law of Repetition. The mind doesn't become strong just because of a single awakening. It doesn't change simply because you listened to a great lesson or read an inspiring book. Just like the body doesn't become solid after one workout, the mind needs to be trained, and especially trained every single day. The difference between someone who thinks clearly and someone constantly pulled into inner conflict doesn't lie in intelligence, but in who persistently trains their thinking in the direction they choose, not once, but every day, many times. You can't simply hope that your mind will instinctively become sharp and effective. It won't do that on its own. If you don't take control of it, the mind will operate in the easiest way possible, reacting emotionally, following old habits, chasing external noise, and in that state, you'll think you're making choices, when in truth, you're just reacting to something external. That's not thinking, that's passive programming, and only when you begin to retrain your mind deliberately do you earn the right to demand a life that is clearer, more effective, and more progressive. The first step in this training process is becoming aware of every thought that arises. You don't need to control everything in your head, but you must know what you're thinking and how it's affecting you. A seemingly harmless thought can still quietly drain your energy if repeated long enough. Thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," "I'm not ready yet," "I need more time," they may sound reasonable, but in reality, they're cleverly disguised signals of procrastination. The mind is very skilled at rationalizing fear, and if you don't recognize this game, you'll be deceived by your own mind without ever knowing it. Once you've observed your thinking, the next step is to build a structure for it. A mind without a guiding framework will drift. You need to give it a list of what to focus on, what to remember, what to return to whenever it's distracted. Write down your goals, your values, your top priorities for the day. And when you realize you're being pulled away by trivial things, a criticism, a negative emotion, a vague worry, you must interrupt that reflex and return to the structure you've chosen. This isn't rigid discipline, it's clear direction. You must also understand a crucial point. The mind remembers through repetition. You can't just think correctly once and expect it to become your default. You must repeat the right thoughts many times until they form new neural pathways in the brain. When you tell yourself, "I am becoming stronger every day," and you actually act that way, your brain registers it. When you reject a weak thought and replace it with a directional question, you're rebuilding your nervous system. And if you do this consistently, your brain will rewire its mental framework and the new pattern will become natural. Thinking habits are just like any other habits. They require practice, and like brushing your teeth, no one teaches you once and leaves it there. You must practice it as an essential part of daily life. You can start with 5 minutes each morning. Sit still, breathe slowly, and ask yourself, what's the most important thing for me today? Or, is this thought moving me forward or pulling me back? Start simple, but do it consistently. Because strength doesn't come from what you do once. Strength comes from what you do regularly. You also need to learn not to let your mind wander without permission. Many people say they feel drained and don't know why. The answer is this: their mind constantly jumps from one thought to another without pause. They're dragged by comparison, by social media, by endless conversations with no resolution. And then they sigh, feeling exhausted without realizing the cause lies in the constant leak of mental energy throughout the day. If you want to become stronger, you need to learn how to protect your mental space, just like you lock your door before going to sleep. Another point that few people emphasize: correct thinking is not unconditional positivity. It's not about saying everything will be fine without doing anything. Right thinking means focusing on what truly matters, no matter how difficult the circumstances. When you feel anxious, you don't have to force yourself to be cheerful. You just need to ask, is this thought useful? Is it helping me solve the problem? Can I choose a thought that's more realistic, more effective? That's what it means to be proactive, and that's what makes you stronger every day. Training the mind also involves eliminating the invisible toxins you feed it daily. The mind, like the body, responds to what you consume. If you constantly expose yourself to drama, negative news, or critical conversations, whether you want to or not, your mind is still being affected. And over time, it will treat negative reactions as the default. So choose your input carefully, not because you're weak and need to avoid things, but because you're conscious enough to know the mind needs a clean environment to grow. Finally, remember this: the mind is not an enemy to be punished. It's a machine to be reprogrammed, and that process requires consistency, not self-judgment every time you fail. There will be days when you lose control, days when you react instead of staying aware, but every time you notice it and return to your chosen thinking structure, that is a step forward. You don't need to be perfect. You just need not to give up, because the difference doesn't come from grand actions. It comes from small choices repeated every day, unseen, unpraised, but known deeply by you that you are training your mind to live differently. Chapter 7. The Discipline of Focus. In a world where everything is racing to capture your attention, from phone notifications, emails, news, social media, to the wandering thoughts in your own head, focus is no longer a luxury. It is a survival skill. And like any other skill, it can be trained or lost, depending on how you deal with daily distractions. Focus does not appear naturally. It is not a gift reserved for a lucky few. It is the product of mental discipline, of deliberate choices made among thousands of things that seem important but bring no real value to you. What confuses many people is this: they're busy all day long, yet don't produce any real results. They work constantly, but don't feel like they're progressing. They move, but they don't go anywhere. The reason is not a lack of action, but a lack of focused presence. Every action that lacks the guidance of a focused mind is merely an energy drain. And when energy is drained without producing results, frustration is inevitable. You think you're lazy, but the truth is, you're being torn apart by too many unrelated fragments. It's not that you're not putting in enough effort, it's that your effort is scattered. Focus is the ability to keep your mind exactly where it needs to be, despite the noise around you. But sadly, the world today doesn't teach us how to stay focused. It teaches us how to react quickly, how to switch scenes constantly, how to track 10 things at once without going deep into any of them. And that's why those who know how to focus have such a tremendous advantage. While others are chasing noise, they're quietly creating. While others jump from idea to idea, they stay committed to one thing and see it through to the end. The issue isn't whether you get distracted. Distraction is inevitable. It's always there. The important question is, do you realize when you're being pulled away from your center? And can you return in time before your energy is completely drained? Focus isn't a fixed state. It's the repeated returning to what matters most every time you veer off track. That's why truly successful people aren't the ones who never get distracted. They're just the ones who recognize distraction faster and return to their goal more quickly. To do that, you need to start by clearly identifying what truly matters. Don't confuse urgent with valuable. Many things may seem urgent, but add nothing to your future. Meanwhile, the things that matter most are often quiet, don't shout for your attention, and don't compete for you. But if you don't consciously choose, your mind will always default to whatever is louder, shinier, and easier. Focus requires you to say no to many things that seem reasonable. It's not easy, but it's the price of clarity. Take a look at your day. How many times have you stopped working just to check your phone without thinking? How many times were you focused before a random thought pulled you into something unrelated? Each time this happens, you don't just lose time, you lose momentum. And the scary part is, you don't even realize it, because distraction doesn't arrive with a loud noise. It comes like an undercurrent, slow but steady. And by the time you notice, it's too late because you've lost the strength to return. The only way to change this is to build the habit of detecting distraction early. As soon as you sense yourself being pulled away from your center, pause. Don't react. Don't rush to fix it. Just observe yourself and recognize, where am I being pulled? And then choose to return. The faster you return, the more power you preserve. Because focus isn't absolute rigidity. It is the art of returning. You also need to create a system to protect your focus, a clean workspace, uninterrupted time blocks, notifications turned off, social media not open by default. These aren't tricks. They are the structure that protects your mental energy. And more important than all of that, you need a clear reason to stay focused. If you don't know why what you're doing matters, you'll abandon it the moment something more appealing appears. Focus is the child of clear goals. You can't sustain focus if you don't know what you're aiming for. So take 5 minutes each day to write down, what is the most important thing today? Then keep it close to you. Every time something tries to pull you away, look at that line and ask yourself, is what I'm doing helping me achieve this? If not, stop. It's that simple. But you need to repeat that dozens of times each day. That's how you rebuild your ability to focus, not through iron will, but through recognition, returning, and maintaining. There's one truth you need to remember. Those who go far aren't the ones who do more things. They are the ones who do the right thing longer, deeper, and without interruption. One person who focuses for 1 hour a day can create results 10 times greater than someone who is distracted all day long. Not because they're more talented, but because they are more fully present. In an era where distraction is the default, focus is a superpower. Don't wait until you feel ready to start training your focus. Start in the middle of the chaos. It is precisely within the chaos that you truly understand the value of a stable mind. And you will see, as long as you can hold one clear point in your mind, the outside world loses its power to drown you. You will still hear the noise, still feel the pressure, but you will no longer be controlled by it. You won't chase it, you'll observe it. Then you'll return to the one thing that truly matters. If you come this far, that means you are already stepping into the 1%. This journey of mastery has no final destination, only the next step. Subscribe to continue walking the path with us. Chapter 8. The Treason of the Drifting Mind. You cannot master your life if you don't master your thoughts. And you cannot master your thoughts if you allow them to drift unconsciously from one moment to the next. The mind, if not guided, will wander. It won't stay still. It will run to the past, jump into the future, and loop around worries, memories, and old reflexes. That's its nature. But the problem is this: if you don't step in to take the lead, you will no longer be the one directing your thoughts, but rather someone being pulled without direction. And this drifting doesn't happen in major life decisions. It begins in the smallest moments, when you allow a negative thought to repeat without challenging it, when you accept a false assumption just because it's familiar, when you let the surrounding environment decide for you what's worth worrying about, what's important, and what deserves a reaction. Every time you surrender your right to choose your thoughts, you're not just losing a minute, you're losing your sense of direction in life. The mind operates continuously. It has no pause button, but what you can do is actively choose what is allowed to repeat, because a thought, no matter how powerful, cannot survive if you don't feed it with your attention. Every thought you pay attention to, dwell on, repeat in your mind, is a brick you lay into the foundation of your thinking. And if you repeat something long enough, it becomes default. No need to review, no need to question. It will run automatically like a background program. That's why so many people still react the same old way, even when they know it no longer serves them. They're not bad people. They've just forgotten they can choose again. To change that, you must begin with a simple yet vital principle. No thought gets to enter and define you unless you have permitted it. Think of it as managing an inner space where only thoughts that are valuable, accurate, and serve your growth are allowed to stay. And the thoughts that come from fear, prejudice, old memories, or negative environments must be examined, must be rejected if needed, must be replaced if they no longer serve. Because you can't control everything that happens out there, but you can absolutely control what you allow to repeat in your mind. To do that, you need to build the habit of intentionally questioning yourself when a thought arises, especially those old, familiar, draining ones. Pause. Don't believe it right away. Don't identify with it immediately. Just ask, is this thought helping me move toward where I want to go, or is it keeping me stuck in where I once was? That question, though simple, can ignite a chain of transformation, because the moment you pause to ask, you've already stepped outside the unconscious loop of old mental habits, and from that place, you can begin to rebuild your direction. This is not theoretical. It's a practical action that happens dozens, even hundreds of times each day. The mind doesn't need you to do something grand. It just needs you to return enough times to the right path until that becomes a natural part of your response. Every time you catch yourself drifting, comparing, getting caught in emotion, recalling what no longer matters, and you choose to return to awareness, you're building an entirely new mental system. No need to wait for life to change. You just need to own the present moment, minute by minute, hour by hour. Another essential element to stop drifting is having a clear direction for your mind to return to. You can't ask your brain to stop worrying if you don't give it something else to focus on. You can't stop yourself from reacting if you don't know what deeper pursuit you're aligned with. That's why everyone needs a personal mental compass. What am I moving toward? Who do I want to become? Which thoughts reflect that person and which do not? Once you've defined those standards, you'll have a mental filter to help you sort your thoughts and actions each day. Imagine your mind as a vast forest. If you don't lead the way, it will grow wild. But if you give it direction, you can carve out clear paths, places where thoughts no longer get lost, where actions are no longer pulled by reflex. And the best part is, you don't have to clear the whole forest in one day. You just need to walk one path long enough, often enough, and that very path will become a firm trail in your brain. That's how neural pathways are formed. That's how you shift from drifting to self-leadership. The world out there will never stop trying to distract you. There will always be things that are more urgent, louder, and easier to do, but you don't have to react to all of it. You just need to know what's worth thinking about. And once you begin living by that principle, you'll feel a distinct shift. Not because circumstances have changed, but because you are finally living in alignment with the mental direction you've chosen. And finally, remember this. Your thinking is the most sacred space you own. Don't let anything, no matter how small or familiar, take up residence there if it doesn't nourish you. You may not control what others say, what has happened, or what the outside world sends your way, but you always have the right to choose which thoughts get to stay, and that choice, repeated long enough, will change your entire life. Chapter 9. Seizing the Dawn. You might think that each day is just a stream of natural events, coming and going depending on luck or your schedule. But no, the new day is not something you walk into unconsciously. It is an opportunity to reprogram your entire mental operating system if you know how to start it right. And that begins with the very first moment you open your eyes, before you touch your phone, before your feet even hit the floor. That moment is a doorway where you either step into the day with agency and direction, or drift into old reflexes, allowing the world to dictate your mood, your mindset, and your results. Most people start the day by reacting. The alarm rings, they jump up, rush, eyes barely open, yet already scanning notifications, emails, social media, letting their minds be immediately pulled into an unfiltered stream of data. And so, before they even remember what they're living for, they're already swept into what others are thinking, saying, and demanding. From that moment, they are no longer authors of their day. They are reactors. And in reaction, there is no creativity, no intention, no inner power, only passivity. And that passivity quietly shapes the rest of the day. If you want to change how you live at its root, don't look for a grand breakthrough at noon. Start in the morning by asking a simple question: what direction will I live in today? You don't need to list 10 goals. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need one clear intention, a direction you choose, so your brain has something to anchor to when distractions come. Understand this: your brain is a goal-seeking system. If you don't give it a goal at the start of the day, it will find one on its own, usually something negative, familiar, or addictive. An effective morning intention is not just a slogan, it is the alignment of thought, emotion, and action into one short, guiding statement. For example, today I will stay calm even if the world is chaotic. Or, I choose to complete my most important task before distractions pull me away. That statement, when repeated with presence, is more than a declaration. It is a navigation command for your entire nervous system. You are setting a focal point, and like a magnifying glass, wherever there is focus, there is power. When you begin your day with clarity, you'll notice something remarkable. The things that used to throw you off now become challenges you were prepared for because you didn't walk into them passively. You chose your mental posture ahead of time, and this doesn't require you to be a sage. It only requires you to pause at the right moment before the world pulls you away. Just 3 minutes each morning. Sit in silence, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and ask, what do I need today to live true to myself? That answer, if honest, will bring you back to your axis, and that axis is your mind's compass. Many people think that creativity or focus is something random, that it comes only when inspiration strikes. But the truth is, you can't wait for inspiration before acting. You must act with intention, and focus will appear as a conditioned response. Each morning, you repeat this process, choosing intention, setting your focus, and keeping your promise to yourself. Is another time you carve a new pathway in your brain. And after enough repetitions, that becomes your new nature. And this may seem small, but don't let its simplicity fool you. People who achieve extraordinary results often start their days the same way, with deliberate stillness, not unconscious chaos. You can do this even if you're busy, because it doesn't require an ideal space. It only requires a commitment. Before I live for anyone else, I will first live in alignment with myself, and that begins with intention, not frantic action. The mind needs a starting point, a doorway to enter, something to shape the entire thought stream that follows. If you don't set that, you'll be driven by events, by other people's emotions, by the residue of yesterday. And if that repeats too often, you are no longer living. You are merely existing in a loop of reflexes. But if you pause just for a moment and choose the first thought you want your nervous system to repeat, then you are rewriting your life's program. No one has to grant you permission. No circumstances need to change. One beautiful truth is this: you don't have to be successful to earn the right to live this way. In fact, only by starting to live this way do you gradually become someone with inner strength, with focus, with clarity. All major transformations begin in small moments that seem insignificant, like when you spend 3 minutes each morning resetting your mind with one right question. And the final thing, more important than all, is that you must be honest with the intention you've chosen. When you say you'll be patient today, have the courage to return to that when anger rises. When you say you'll focus, learn to refuse distraction, not because you fear losing control, but because you respect your own choice. Holding to your morning intention isn't about forcing yourself. It is the act of a spiritually mature person, someone who knows what they are living for and refuses to be swept away by the wind. Chapter 10. Silence the enemy broadcast. One of the most dangerous things in this era is not the lack of information, but too much of it. It's not that you don't have choices, it's that you're caught in too many choices that don't truly come from you. The modern mind is like a room full of noise. There's the voice of the market, the voice of family, the voice of social media, headlines, unverified advice, surface-level trends, and countless other things competing for a central place in your brain. And if you don't actively turn it off, you'll live under the illusion that you're thinking when you're merely repeating what others have thought before you. And that is not freedom. That is mental slavery in its most sophisticated form. No one explicitly tells you, "I will think for you." The world does exactly that every single day by feeding your mind a non-stop stream of messages suggesting what you should worry about, believe in, desire, fear, and even who you should become. And if you don't have a filter, if you don't know when to shut it off, when to question it, then bit by bit, your mind will be occupied, not by force, but by overload, not by domination, but the subtlety of a society that constantly makes you feel like you're staying updated, when in reality, you're being shaped without realizing it. Turning down the noise doesn't mean rejecting the world. It's how you reclaim your role within it. You can't control everything others say, but you can absolutely choose what is allowed to remain in your mind. And this doesn't require a complex philosophy. It starts with one simple question. Am I thinking this because I truly believe it, or just because I've heard it enough times? That question, if asked consistently, can free you from a whole array of borrowed thoughts that have been shaping your lifestyle, your choices, and your reactions for years. Take a closer look. How many beliefs in your head weren't actually built by you, but were passed down from your environment, from parents, teachers, advertisements, or social media? Have you ever asked yourself, do I truly want this? Or am I just chasing it because someone else said it was success? That kind of self-questioning isn't negative skepticism. It's the first step in reclaiming the right to original thought. In a world where everyone is shouting their opinions, intentional silence is a courageous act. If you want to create a life of depth, you must begin by returning to the quiet space within. That is the space where you don't chase noise, don't react on impulse, don't click on something just because it's flashy. It's where you sit down and ask, what do I truly believe if no one else were pushing me? That answer, once found in stillness, will be stronger than any external call, because it comes from a place that isn't pulled. It comes from the core. To live from that core, you must develop an essential habit. Don't let reaction become default. Every time you read a shocking news headline, every time you see someone share a conflicting opinion, every time you feel the urge to speak out just because your emotions have been triggered, pause. Not to remain silent forever, but to choose your response from a calmer place. Your mind does not need to respond to everything. Sometimes the greatest power lies in the ability not to react. The truly free person is the one who can live peacefully without constant validation from the outside world. They don't need to know what everyone else thinks every hour. They don't need to stay up to date with every new trend. They choose what truly matters and let go of the rest. And the miraculous thing is, once you begin turning down the noise, you start to hear your own voice more clearly. A voice no longer drowned out or buried under unfiltered data. That voice is your personal compass, and if you follow it, You'll no longer need the crowd to know where you're going. Turning down the noise is also an act of deep discipline. It means stepping out of your comfort zone, the place where you're constantly stimulated by new information, where you're endlessly entertained, and instead, you choose purposeful boredom. You choose to read slowly instead of scroll quickly. You choose to write your own thoughts rather than just consume others. You choose to spend time each day reflecting on your own thinking. That doesn't look flashy, but it's the foundation of true intellectual freedom. And along that journey, you'll begin to see clearly. You don't need much to live with clarity. You only need to know what's truly yours and what is not. Each time you distinguish between the two, you take one step closer to a state of mind that no one can take from you, a state not dependent on circumstance, not swayed by the news cycle, not shaken by others' agreement or disagreement. It is the state of someone who thinks with will, not by habit. Remember this: chaos is not something you have to live with. It is something you can intentionally turn off, and only when you do will you start to hear the one thing worth hearing. The truth within you. Not someone else's truth, not the crowd's explanation, but the belief you've built through observation, reflection, and resolute choice. And once you've found that belief, you'll no longer be carried away by every passing wind. You'll stand firm, not because you know everything, but because you know you no longer live by others' thoughts. Chapter 11. Taming the primal beast. If your mind were a car, the question is, who's holding the steering wheel? Is it you with awareness, direction, and clear goals? Or is it your old instincts with unconscious reactions, programs replaying from the past, and choices made solely to avoid fear? Too many people live their entire lives without ever truly placing their hands on the wheel of their own mind. They don't steer. They simply guess the road based on immediate emotion. And in a world running at high speed, a car racing forward without a driver is an accident waiting to happen. The human mind isn't just a place where thoughts arise. It's the central control system of all behavior and emotion. Every decision you make, big or small, begins with a thought. Every action you take, conscious or unconscious, is driven by a system of thinking running underneath. If you don't control that system, you can't control your actions. And when behavior is out of control, life stops being a journey. It becomes a prolonged reaction. One thing must be understood. Instinct is not the enemy. It's a system designed to help you react quickly in life or death situations. But the problem is, most of modern life is no longer about biological survival. You no longer need to flee lions or fight for every bite of food. But your brain, especially the limbic system, the primal beast within, still behaves as if you're in the wild. It reacts strongly to rejection, fear, failure, and criticism, as if they were threats to your life. And if you let that instinctual system hold the wheel, you'll constantly avoid what's difficult, chase what's easy, react emotionally, and drift further away from the path you actually want to follow. To master your thinking means stepping out of reaction mode and stepping into navigation mode. It doesn't mean you don't feel emotion. It means you don't let emotion decide for your thinking. You notice when a negative thought appears, and instead of letting it drag you down, you examine it, question it, and choose a different response. This doesn't happen in a single moment. It's the result of hundreds, even thousands of times asking yourself, am I thinking this because it's true or just because it's a familiar reflex? Imagine you're driving and suddenly the car in front of you slams on the brakes. Your first reflex might be panic. But if you've trained in driving long enough, you don't just react. You observe, assess the distance, identify an escape path, and respond with control. The mind works the same way. If you've trained it to pause before reacting, you are upgrading the operating system that runs your entire life. And that upgrade doesn't come from inspiration. It comes from deliberate mental training. Every day, someone who hasn't practiced intentional thinking will let emotion lead the way. When they're sad, they think negatively. When they fail, they declare themselves useless. When they're rejected, they believe they're not enough. And if those reactions aren't challenged, they become a false truth that traps them in a loop of mediocrity. But someone who has trained their mind is different. They may go through the same sadness, the same failure, the same rejection, but they know to pause. They know that a thought is just a signal, not a fact. They ask again. They choose a new perspective. They adjust the wheel instead of letting go of it. You don't need to be a psychologist to do this. You just need the courage to interrupt the automatic reaction and insert a pause between stimulus and action. That pause, even just a few seconds, is where decisions are made. It's where you shift from unconscious to conscious. It's where you take the wheel again. And gradually, each decision made in that space becomes a habit that leads to clear thinking, consistent behavior, and a life no longer swept away by every small wave. No one is born knowing how to control their thinking, but all who live deeply, who have influence, who possess inner strength, are people who have trained that skill with discipline. They don't live the easiest way. They live the most directed way. They don't let instinct choose for them. They choose what's right even when it's not immediately pleasant. They accept discomfort because they understand that mature thinking isn't born from ease, but from repeated right choices. And you can start that too, not by changing your whole life at once. Just by starting the next time a thought arises, instead of chasing it, ask where it came from. Remind yourself, I am not this thought. I am the one observing and choosing. That statement, repeated in awareness, is the key that unlocks the door, puts your hand back on the wheel, and moves you out of instinctive reaction and into conscious living. Chapter 12. Slaying the serpent of later. There is a kind of thinking silently destroying millions of lives, not with a fatal blow, but through small, repeated cuts every day. That is weak thinking. It doesn't scream, it doesn't slam the table. It's not dramatic. It whispers softly, pretending to be friendly. It's okay to take the day off today. You're tired. Don't push yourself. It's no big deal. Just do it later. And so you listen. No battle breaks out, just a quiet surrender. And yet, another moment where you confirm to your brain that you're not strong enough to control yourself. Weak thinking doesn't come from a lack of courage you were born with. It is the result of small negotiations with yourself, repeated in the shadows. One time, you give in. One time, you allow procrastination. One time, you stay silent in the face of what's wrong. And slowly, you lose your inner power. The danger is that once you allow yourself to compromise once, it becomes easier the second time, the third, until it becomes part of your character. Face the truth. Every act of procrastination is reverse training. Every time you say, I'll do it later, you're teaching your brain that the goal doesn't matter, that your word can't be trusted, and that emotions can dictate your actions. You think you're just taking a momentary pause, but in reality, you're carving a neural trench where weak thinking becomes the familiar path. So every time difficulty arises, you take the same route of escape instead of facing it. So if you want to change from the root, you can't keep negotiating with yourself. You must establish a life principle, a principle of non-negotiation with discipline. If you've set a goal, execute it. No second guessing, no waiting for motivation, no waiting for the perfect condition. Because the strong are not those who always feel strong. They are those who act even when they don't want to. Discipline isn't born from comfort. It is born from the choice not to negotiate. Repeat it until it becomes a standard of living. The problem is, the mind will always test you. It will present reasons, rationalizations, pleas, promises, deceptions, all designed to delay you. And if you don't realize this is a psychological game, you'll lose without knowing it. That's why you need to build a new reflex. When you feel the urge to procrastinate, act immediately. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just begin. Because every immediate action is a strike at the cycle of delay. It is a declaration. I don't live by emotion. I live by principle. Being without negotiation doesn't mean becoming rigid or unkind to yourself. On the contrary, it is the highest form of kindness you can give yourself, because when you are disciplined, you create an internal environment of safety where promises matter, where determination is not betrayed, and where every action carries meaning. The person who doesn't negotiate is the most confident. They don't need to check for motivation. They don't need anyone to push them. They know they are the driver, and no one can steer them off the path they've chosen. One of the simplest but most effective ways to eliminate weak thinking is to write your commitment down on paper every day. It doesn't need to be long. Just one sentence. Today I will do X, regardless of how I feel. When you see that sentence, you're sending a strong signal to your brain. Emotions are not the driver. Action is. And when you keep that promise, even with small tasks, you begin to restore your trust in yourself. And self-trust is something no one can give you and no one can take from you except yourself. A strong thinker is not someone who never gets tired. They too have days filled with doubt and pressure. But the difference is they don't let moods decide outcomes. They act despite the state. They move forward even when the destination is unclear. And in that action, without negotiation, without waiting, they prove that inner strength isn't a gift you're born with, but a choice repeated often enough to become a trait. From this moment forward, every time you feel the urge to delay, remember, you're standing at a crossroads. One path is familiar, easy to walk, but leading to regret. The other is challenging, but each step makes you more resilient, and you don't need to wait until tomorrow to choose. Every second you remain awake is an opportunity to kill weak thinking, and you can do it right now with one simple act. Don't delay anymore. Chapter 13. Belief, the unseen shield. There is a common misunderstanding that causes many people to lose themselves without even realizing it. They believe that belief is a feeling, something that comes naturally when things go well, when they are recognized, when they have proof of success. But the truth is the opposite. Belief doesn't come after you see results. It comes before, as a proactive act, a conscious decision. Belief is not a reward. It is a foundation. It's not something you receive at the end of the journey. It's what you need from the very first step, when you have nothing in your hands but a trembling heart. Your mind is not programmed to believe. It is programmed to doubt, to assess risks, to avoid pain. Therefore, belief is always a choice that goes against instinct. It is when you choose to move forward even though no one promises there's a destiny. It's when you choose to stand back up even with failure laughing behind you. It's when you repeat the action even though yesterday everything felt meaningless. That is the choice of someone emotionally mature. I don't need to feel good to do what is right. I choose to believe not because I'm certain, but because I'm committed. It's between those who achieve lasting success and those who stop halfway is not intelligence or circumstances. It's about who understands this truth. Belief doesn't fall from the sky like magic. It is built brick by brick through consistent actions. Every day you keep a promise to yourself. You're laying down a new layer of belief. Every time you move forward in silence, without applause, you are training yourself to build an unshakable foundation. And from that place, which may appear fragile, inner strength begins to grow. You don't need to wait until you feel motivated enough to believe in yourself. Because if you let emotion lead belief, you'll only believe on sunny days. But life has too many rainy days. And if you don't train yourself to believe, despite the weather of your emotions, you'll be swept away by every shifting wind. Those Those who live by emotion wait for belief. Those who live by choice create it. Every morning, they don't ask, "Do I feel confident in myself today?" They say to themselves, "I will act like someone who deserves the dream I've chosen." This mindset will transform your entire path of growth because it pulls you out of dependency on external conditions. You don't need approval. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need concrete evidence to choose belief in your worth, in your path, in the deeper meaning of each small step you take. When you choose belief without proof, you give your potential the chance to exist. And that very choice will gradually attract the evidence you were once waiting for, not the other way around. If you notice, the most inspiring people are not those who had an easy life. They are the ones who were doubted, rejected, blocked, but kept going because they didn't build their lives on temporary emotions. They built on the foundation of this thinking. I choose to believe, and I will live as if it's true until it becomes true. This is not blind faith. It is a high form of mental discipline. The discipline to keep belief alive even on days it feels strangled by reality. You can do this too. Start with the smallest things. Every time you feel like giving up because of negative emotions, remind yourself, "This is how I feel." But emotions are not the truth. Belief is the guide. Every time you find yourself doubting, write down what you want to believe and act as if it's already beginning to happen. When you live as if good things are coming, you create space for them to arrive. That's how you turn a thought into reality, step by step, not through delusion, but through committed, aligned action. And when you persist, something remarkable will happen. One day, you'll look back and realize all the things you once chose to believe in without evidence are now clearly present in your life. Not because you were lucky, but because you didn't wait for belief to come from the outside. You carried it into each step, and that is what made the path appear beneath your feet, little by little. Chapter 14, The Honor Guard of Solitude. There is a kind of strength no one claps for, no one witnesses, and no one praises. It happens in silence behind closed doors, where it's just you and yourself. That is mental discipline. The quality that is forged not in crowds, but in moments when no one is watching. And it is in those moments that your true self is shaped, because when no one is looking, there's no performance. Your choices are no longer made to please others, but to meet the standards you've set for yourself. An intentional practice. It doesn't appear randomly, nor does it come from fleeting inspiration. It comes from small, consistent decisions repeated every day. You don't wake up one day suddenly disciplined. You choose discipline in each isolated thought, by resisting a procrastinating impulse, by interrupting a complaint in your head, by not allowing yourself to subtly justify a wrong action. And each time you do that, you reinforce a mental structure, stronger and more stable with time. Mental discipline doesn't mean suppressing emotion. On the contrary, a mentally disciplined person is deeply honest with their inner world. They see laziness, fear, doubt, but they don't let those feelings make the decisions. They acknowledge them, then do what needs to be done. No reaction, no indulgence, no giving in to fleeting states. They understand that the mind is like a river. Without a bank to shape it, it will overflow and wash everything away. Discipline is the bank that keeps that stream flowing in the right direction. The question isn't, can you think with discipline when you feel motivated? The question is, can you maintain that awareness on empty, quiet, monotonous days? Because that's what most of life is. Not every day will hold something grand. Not every moment brings inspiration. But if you continue to think clearly, make sound choices, and self-govern through your internal commitments, then you're building a system that nothing external can break. The reality is, people who achieve the extraordinary don't do so because they're more talented, but because they remain loyal to their own standards even when no one is watching. They wake early not to show off. They write, study, train, not for an audience. They correct a flawed thought, not because they're forced to. They act as if someone is always watching, but that someone is their future self. And it's that self-respect that drives their progress forward. One way to start cultivating mental discipline is by establishing a clear internal rule. I will not allow my mind to say anything I don't want to become true. Every time you catch yourself thinking negatively, doubting, delaying, comparing, pause and rewrite the story in your mind. Choose a new affirmation. Teach your mind what you want it to believe. And when you repeat that daily, you're not just thinking differently, you're shaping a new identity, stronger, sharper, immune to deception. No one can see how much work you've done inside your own mind. But that very effort is what separates a reactive person from a self-possessed one. Mental discipline isn't flashy, it isn't celebrated, but it's what keeps you from chaos, helps you stay anchored to your values, your direction, and your self-respect. And if you persist, one day you won't need reminders, because you'll have become that kind of person. Chapter 15, Becoming the Legend. If you're truly serious about changing your life, start with the only place you have full control over, your own thoughts. Every action begins with a thought. Every habit is born from a repeated mental reflex. Every result in your life, whether success or failure, is not random, but a mirror reflection of the belief system you've been living by. Therefore, to become a better version of yourself, you don't need to wait for a special day. You just need to begin thinking like that person, starting today. The most important question you can ask isn't, who am I right now? But rather, how would the person I want to become think in this situation? When you do that, you break free from the old mental grooves where your mind reacts by habit and step into intentional awareness. You are no longer led by emotion. You no longer allow your environment to determine your inner strength. You place yourself in the shoes of your upgraded version and start acting as if you already are that person. This is not empty imagination. This is neurological reprogramming when you think like someone who is determined, confident, and disciplined to those very qualities. Every correct thought is a button press that sends a signal to your brain. This is the new standard. And if you persist, the brain begins to register it not just as theory, but as a new operating system. You're training your mind to believe that what you've never been can now be chosen and lived. The person you want to become does not exist in the future. That person is waiting for you to choose them in the present. You don't need to change everything overnight, but you do need to begin living from a different state of mind. Instead of asking, how can I overcome this fear? Ask, how would the version of me I aspire to be confront this fear? Instead of asking, am I capable? Ask, how would my ideal self think about this limitation? When you change the question, you shift the entire direction of your mind from limitation to possibility, from reaction to intention, from victim to leader. Remember, you are not the sum of what has happened. You are the result of what you choose to believe today and continue to repeat tomorrow. Every past experience can become either a foundation or a chain, depending on how you interpret it. If you see your failures as proof of inadequacy, you reinforce the old self. But if you see them as the opening chapters of a transformation story, you begin rewriting your entire life journey with a new kind of thinking. The mindset of someone who never backs down. Thinking like the person you want to become does not require you to pretend. It requires you to consciously familiarize yourself with a new internal standard. At first, there will be resistance. The old mind will echo familiar voices. Who are you to think you deserve this? Stop dreaming. Get real. But you must understand, that's not the truth. That's the echo of an old self afraid of being replaced. And if you are aware enough not to believe it, you'll open the door for a new self to step in. Each morning, don't begin with worry or old habits. Start with one powerful question. How will I think like the person I want to become today? You don't need big changes. Just one small aligned action. Waking up earlier, rewriting a thought, finishing what you've postponed. Success isn't something you wait for. It's something you build by thinking like the person you aspire to be. Now, your thoughts shape your path. When you master them, you stop reacting and start creating. And that's the real gift, not just success, but the freedom to fully become yourself. So begin today. One thought, one promise, one step closer to the life you're meant to live. You now hold the blueprint. The path forward is one of daily discipline. If you choose to walk it, subscribe and join the ranks of those who master their minds. The choice, as always, is yours.